Last week, a Chinese shipyard announced it had completed building a shipyard in just 5 months. 5 months is just over 150 days. This facility, they say, will deliver everything from very large crude carriers, ultra-large container ships, very large gas carriers. China already builds over half of the world's ships. Shipyards like this are a case in point. It comes at a time of growing concern about India's own deficient commercial shipbuilding yards. Now, Indian shipyards make very few ships. In fact, we're at the bottom of the scale. We're number 22 when it comes to the list of countries that are building merchant ships. This has huge implications for us. India will be the world's third largest economy by the end of this decade, but it is almost entirely dependent on foreign ships to transport its cargo and import energy. India spends over $75 billion, that's almost equal to our defense budget, on hiring ships for importing energy and exporting cargo. Joining me to discuss the state of play are Mr. Jayant Patil, Captain Sanjay Parashar, and my colleague Nivriti Mohan, I will ask about what we need to do. Welcome to the News9 Plus show. Mr. Patil, you just seen that report. A Chinese shipbuilders completed a shipyard in 150 days in Dalian. This shipyard spans over 2 million square meters of building space. It has 17 large workshops. As someone who's part of one of our largest infrastructure companies, Larsen & Toubro, which is possibly the last Indian company to have built a shipyard of this size, how long would it take an Indian company to build this?
Sandeep, we built our shipyard, which is similar size, of course not in terms of covered area, in exactly 2 years. But I must tell you,
yes,
the shipyard at Dalian was built by STX, that's a Korean company,
right,
about 16, 17 years back.
yes,
This Chinese shipyard, which bought it in 2022,
yes,
now added the workshops.
right,
So when we look at the greenfield
yes,
versus a brownfield workshop building, to my mind, what the Chinese have achieved, the best of the companies in the world can as well achieve.
right,
The Chinese feat is extremely important, and I must say an engineering feat. 153 days to build 2 million square feet is, no child's play.
right.
Of course, as a good engineering company, we have our own success stories, but
Yes.
not at that scale.
Right. We don't have success stories at that scale. Captain Parashar now joins us. Captain Parashar, Indian shipbuilding continues to be in a crisis. We don't have enough merchant ships, to transport our cargoes. This is an issue that the government of India has been flagging repeatedly as well. Break down for us, what is the problem really? Why are no orders being placed, even despite shipbuilding being declared an infrastructure area? And why is it that more Indian ships aren't being built in Indian shipyards? Why are shipyards like L&T, for instance, still waiting for orders?
Thank you, Sandeep. Wonderful subject. The first time I went to China in a shipyard was Shanghai Guan Shipyard in 1991.
Yes.
And that time I was just 20 years young guy.
Yes.
And I've just come back from China 3 days back, and
Right.
I visited one of their shipyards recently.
Yes.
And actually, there is no comparison. We are 50 years behind China.
50 years behind China.
50 years. That is
Right.
very simple. And it can be more, but it can't be less. Now look at Hong Kong, which was a shipping hub, and there are a lot of Indians there who have been to China, who go to shipyards. There are Indians working in those,
Right.
shipyards to help them with regard to the new technology what is coming in. Bottom line is, the shipyards, Europe and America was great
Right.
before Second World War, and by 60s and 70s it shifted to Japan.
Right.
And then from Japan, it shifted to Korea.
Yes.
From Korea, it shifted to China because labor was cheap. But remember
Yes.
one thing,
Yes.
Indian labor is 1/10 on performing index when it comes to comparing with shipyards in China, Korea or Japan. We are
Right.
only 1/10. It is not just the labor cost.
Explain for
The
us what
biggest-
this 1/10 figure is. And when you
1/10
say,
is, let's say, with all the skills,
yes,
what a person delivers in 10 hours in
Yes.
India is delivered in 1 hour in China. I don't think labor is the only criteria. If
Right.
that was the criteria, India would have been doing wonders. हम यहाँ पर एक मच्छी बोट ढंग की नहीं बना पाते हैं, आप
Right.
एलएनजी एलपीजी की तो बात ही नहीं कर सकते हैं. So bottom line is,
Right.
government never had political will. You need somebody like
Yes.
Manmohan Singh of 1991
Right.
in shipping ministry
Yes.
to convince Mr. Modi
Yes.
that this is very important because it's $1 trillion industry. But
Right.
the catch here is, out of 300 shipyards, when
Yes.
nearly more than 100 went bust in 2010 in
Yes.
China, the government was able to hold on.
Yes.
India is a too much democratic country.
Right.
So until and unless we see liberalization, and
Yes.
you can't have 10% rate of interest,
Right.
you can't have customs duty on a simple pipe, leave aside radars and high-tech equipments,
Yes.
the extent what is there in India. तो ऐसा है, ऊंची दुकान फीका पकवान. तुम्हारे यहाँ
Unchi
पर बजट
Dukan,
आएंगे, बजट जाएंगे,
Pika Pakwan.
आज
No,
नहीं
but
बनेंगे.
that's a point that's very well made, Sanjay Prashar. And of course, I must tell you that we might not make very good fishing vessels, but we make top-class, world-class submarines, and possibly that gives you an idea of where our priorities are. They're on defense and not on the commercial side. And this is a issue that we've flagged repeatedly here on the News9 Plus show. But Nivriti, what is the problem really? Why is the government unable to articulate a clear vision for shipbuilding? Captain Parashar mentioned that he wants a Manmohan Singh kind of minister to tell Prime Minister Modi to rouse the shipbuilding industry from its stupor. But why are there so many attempts at getting this industry to start, but nothing really happens?
See, I would agree with Captain Parashar. He has said that government needs to work in this direction, and they have not worked in this direction until recently, when they realized when the Red Sea crisis happened,
Yes.
and then the Ukraine crisis happened, and this is the point when they realized that shipbuilding is also a strategic thing for India.
It's a strategic sector,
yeah,
absolutely.
because
Yes.
90% of your trade is happening through maritime
Yes.
routes, and you don't own your ships. And what happens if tomorrow somebody tells you that we are not going to supply you ships?
Yes.
We are stuck, and we can't be the third largest
We
economy.
are stuck, we are stranded, and as
in the
the
world.
title of our show says, it's swim or sink for us. But Mr. Patil, this point that Nivriti made, it was the Red Sea crisis that was a wake-up call of sorts, when we suddenly realized we didn't own any ships. 90% of our cargo was being transported by foreign flagged merchant vessels. Tell us 5 things that the government really needs to do now on a urgent basis. The house is on fire right now. It's a crisis. What are the 5 things? Very quickly, tell us what the government really needs to do
I
to
think,
energize this sector.
So shipbuilding, as I said, is not about building hulls, but building the machinery and the various equipment and systems that go in, including electronics.
Right.
Now, this is essentially where we need to put our act quite substantially together.
Yes.
Besides, shipbuilding, as Captain Parashar very rightly said, is an industry that thrives. It uses a lot of labor, but the labor productivity, and that directs actually towards enormous amount of automation.
Yes.
And the industry 4.0 kind of practices which the leading shipyards today use, and of course a full-fledged modularization right from design to
Yes.
engineering to actually building. Now this is essentially where the enhancement in terms of productivity can be multifold.
Right.
Current scenario, what Captain Parashar said, I agree. At the same time, our delegations had very recently gone after this scenario to Korea, and our current productivity levels, if we compare India and Korea, is somewhere between 1:4 to 1:6. So we certainly have a lot to do in India, which
Right.
includes the skilling, including use of technology, including modularization, the overall ecosystem to be put together, finances, the duties, taxes,
Yes.
including customs and varieties of things. Now, if all this is not there,
Yes.
just by saying that we have large amount of youth and that's our future, we
Yes.
can't gainfully utilize them. Also meet the strategic need that Indian cargo moves on Indian owned vessels,
Yes.
Indian flagged vessels.
Right, absolutely. Captain Parashar, the 2 or 3 things that the government really needs to do on priority to create a, if you can call it a China +1 model, where India becomes a top shipbuilding country in the next couple of years.
presently we are not in top 10, but I think my wish list is only 5 items.
Yes.
The first one is deregulation. And I think it has to be a liberal approach. And secondly is we don't want just government incentives. The ship making cost, if let's say it is 100 million, by the time ship is made and delivered in a timeline, because commercial markets vary, the consumption by the shipyard is only 30 to 40% or maximum is 50% equity.
Right.
So like the Japanese system, they must allow, the redoing of the loans, or probably, taking nearly 100% of the loans. So I think that liberalization of economics into shipping has
Yes.
not happened. It is just that, we are waiting for it for too long.
Yes.
Third thing I think is, it is a $1 trillion industry.
Right.
And if we are really looking at this $1 trillion industry, we are already behind Vietnam. We are already behind Philippines. Indonesia is probably slightly ahead of us. So I think Dubai has got a better shipyard than Colombo's have got better shipyard than India. So I think we have to have second. The third thing is, the liberalized kind of a technology joint venture partners, where we should not delay it for so long that, Japanese, they go to other countries, or the Koreans, they go to other countries. And fourth thing, I think the administration, it has to be more like a private administration.
Right.
Unfortunately, Gift City didn't work it out. So last of the list, I will say, what you write on paper, don't talk so much about green that
Right.
you don't do the bottom line, what is required to do business in India.
Yes, absolutely. Ease of doing business is, of course, the final point that you mentioned, but very, very interesting takeaways here from some of the best in the business, what India needs to do to become a great shipbuilding nation once again. And shipbuilding needs to be tackled as a strategic sector. Unfortunately, it hasn't got the kind of highlight that China has been giving its own shipbuilding sector. But thank you very much for joining us, Jayant Patil, Captain Sanjay Parashar, and of course my colleague.
Thank you, Sandeep, for a wonderful subject. Thank you.
Thank you.